Walter Hudson.
The one thing I focus on is it's messaging, but it's not messaging just in the sense of trying to find a creative way to say the same thing. I think we need to look at the root of what it is that we're trying to get out there to the electorate. And I think it has to be, as conservatives, whatever label you want to apply to it, as the right, we tend to be very analytical, we tend to be intellectual, we tend to think in terms of, well, that's not going to work because of this math I just did on this napkin. But that's not going to convince anybody. What convinces people is emotionally appealing moral arguments. We need to be willing to stand up and emphatically argue morally for individual rights. Until we're willing to do that, we're not going to have a message that actually gets down inside of people where they live and pulls them up out of their seat. We're going to be appealing to their brain, and their gears will be turning up there thinking about budgets and numbers. But when the DFL or the left comes talking about the moral reason why we need to have universal health care, their version of a moral reason, it's going to be more appealing because people like to be good. They like to think of themselves as being good. We need to explain why our policies are morally good.
Sarah Janicek.
And just to refresh everyone's memory, the question was, what would you change in the last cycle or the last?
Last cycle, sure.
Well, what I would change in the last 20 years is let's get the hell off the social issues. And you should know I get along great with a lot of social conservatives, but how many elections are we winning the last 20 years? As some of you may know, I wrote a piece from the heart against the gay marriage amendment. Who read that? I had a bachelor farmer uncle who lived with a partner a couple farms down. They had to keep it hidden all their lives. That thing went viral. And not only did that thing go viral across the country, but that thing went viral in our party. And I cannot tell you how many well-respected social conservative Republican men called me, wrote me 3-page emails to say thank you. And so I started out earlier saying Rome is burning. Let's get the hell off the social issues and focus on the fiscal ones and win some elections. Because if you go back to everything that Ronald Reagan said and wrote, it was the fiscal issues he was concerned about.
Dan Severson.
Well, this kind of pulls everybody who's in here in, and I did something I'd never done before. I'd been running for office before, but this time I went down and I did poll watching down in the heart of the beast. I was down in the Brian Coyle Center, and I had 2 Somali friends who were with me, and we were down there watching what was going on. When they found out we were Republican poll watchers, they said, "You go stand over here." And the bottom line was I had both of these Somalis file complaints because one of the interpreters was saying to each one that came in there, here's the Democrats, here's the Republicans. The Democrats are our friends. Don't even worry about who's running on the Republican side, just vote Democrat. Now this was to all of the Somalis that were lined up outside the door because of the social issue that Sarah's talking about. We had gone into that community and said, you know what? This is about family values. This is about what's important to your family and your culture. And they turned out in droves. Now, the problem was they knew how to vote now on the marriage amendment, and they were voting against or for the marriage amendment, but they were voting for the Democrats as well. We need poll watchers, and we need election judges that will step up to the plate in these high population, diverse areas and get down there and be the feet on the ground and hold the system accountable. We got a broken system. And we need more people to engage in that.
Mark Westphal.
Andy made a great point about the PACs that are out there right now, and obviously the Democrats have more PACs that are aligned to their values, which puts our party at a disadvantage right away because automatically the Republican Party, especially in Minnesota, is on the defense. And we have to justify our areas instead of motivating a base to go out for the ideas that we want to do. But as soon as we go out on the offensive, we become the group that's kind of a little bit whiny because we're so defensive, as Walter kind of mentioned. We're crunching the numbers at every turn and making it as realistic as possible, knowing that everyone in this room cares about politics. But when you have 40 to 50 to 60% of Minnesotans who aren't engaged on a daily basis and don't take the time or know where to get that information to get as detailed as we are, we look like we're taking our ball and running home on a lot of these issues. So understanding that we are playing a different type of game with the political PACs that are out there, we need to figure out how we can actually message the way that's not negative, but's positive, and still be able to defend our stances and turn that around into a positive.
Next, Marianne Stebbins.
What would I have changed about the last election cycle? There are two things. One, get in touch with the voters. We had an economy that was crumbling out there. And what are we out there talking about? We're talking about voter ID. Nobody cared about voter ID, regardless of whether it's right or wrong. That's what we were leading with, and that's not where people were. They were dealing with losing jobs. They were dealing with trying to meet their bills. And the marriage amendment, too, again, regardless of where you stood on it, didn't affect most people. That's not where they were. It's the economics. And we weren't talking about that. We were leading with the marriage amendment. We were leading with voter ID, and nobody cared about it. The other thing I would have changed is the legislature. When we had the majority of the Minnesota legislature, did we act like the party of small government? We think we're the party of small government. They don't see it out there. Because at the federal level, we're voting for bigger and more defense. We think that liberals think there's no amount of money too great to spend on education. They think that Republicans think there is no amount of money that's too great to throw at the Pentagon. So if we're going to be serious about being the party of small government, we have to act like it because that message is not getting across.
Can I quick respond to a couple items since I was the campaign manager of the marriage amendment?
Andy?
One, I can't remember the last time that taxes won 75 of 87 counties. I can't remember the last time. I mean, I've got the statistics here. People love to blame the marriage amendment, but they have absolutely no proof to back that up. We won 75 of 87 counties. In 10 seats where the DFL won a Senate seat, in 10 of them, the marriage amendment outperformed the Democrat and it outperformed the Republican. Until we sit back and say, look, we got beat, we got outplayed, we're going to continue this cycle. And Sarah, the social issue, the fiscal issues, I mean, how'd that work out for Romney? Or the fiscal issues? It didn't. You know, how did it work out for Tim Pawlenty in Iowa? How did it work out for all? It didn't work. Nobody door knocks based off taxes. They door knock for life. I'm sorry, I'm not willing to forget about little babies that have been slaughtered, 50 million of them, because to win an election. I'm
All
just
right,
not.
I get to respond to that. A couple of things. I may be a moderate on social issues, but you know something? I bet I agree with all the social conservatives here that abortion should never have been decided by the Supreme Court. And so maybe there's value in going back to that conversation because I think there's a lot more we agree with. That these things should be these things that are controversial, the so-called social issues, should probably be decided by the people. Now, on the other hand, let's talk about Iowa. Pawlenty and Bachmann was a fight to the right. That's all that was. And you can focus on all the stats you want, Andy, and I know you're smart and you're good and I respect you, but the bottom line is we are losing the PR war because we are worried about marriage amendment when people are trying to figure out how the hell they're going to pay for Obamacare.
All right. So we disagree on the marriage amendment, somewhat. And that's okay. All right, I've got a question. I'll just open this up to anybody. We don't have to go down the line. Whoever wants to answer, just pick up the microphone, and we'll do that the rest of the night. And then we're going to, after my question, we'll start asking all of your questions. But how do you explain to the average independent voter, maybe somebody who doesn't pay a lot of attention but still votes, and there's a lot of those out there, how do you explain to them why conservative policies are better than liberal policies for them?
Well, what are conservative policies? Maybe we'd like to agree that it's decreasing the government footprint. If that's true, then we need to be consistent about it. And I'll come back to, these civil liberties issues, or, why do Republicans think that we have to, have bases in 130 countries around the world? We're not credible on being the party of small government. And so until we start talking about actually decreasing the impact that government has on people's lives, we're not going to be credible. Yes, we can talk about fiscal issues, and we're not even necessarily credible there. So we're going to have to start acting like the party of smaller government, if we're going to convince anyone that, we deserve those votes.
Aaron?
I'm going to jump in here. We can talk about what to talk about all day long. We can talk about platform. We can talk about, that's all stuff for the convention. I think if we really want to make a difference in how we move forward, we have to talk about tactical things. How do we convince people? Through humor, through social media, through conversations at the dinner table. You're on your way to a movie and they say, do you want to go see Zero Dark 30 or do you want to watch the latest Adam Sandler throwing his head up against a wall movie? Oh, I think I'd rather go see Zero Dark 30. I mean, we have choices to make every single day to engage in conversation or to not engage in conversation when it comes to our values and when it comes to what we stand for and who we should vote for and what are the issues of the day. From a tactical standpoint, I think it's very, very important that we use things that the low information voters, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, there are people out there who just don't pay attention, who watch The View, who watch Saturday Night Live, who watch Jon Stewart, and that's where they get their news. Engage those people. Believe it or not, they probably agree with you 80% of the time. They just don't know it. Because what we are painted as in every facet of media is something different than what they can relate to. So from a tactical standpoint, we can talk about what we want to talk about all day long, but I think it's important to also inject humor, inject social media, inject regular conversations with regular people.
Sarah, and then Mark, and then Andy.
I've thought about this for a long time, and I can't believe what has happened to me in the last few months. I have been accosted by people. And let me talk about the couple at Kentucky Fried Chicken off the Alexandria exit. I was on my way up to the lake when it was really cold. There's no heat. I had to spend the night over there just living off a fire, which was kind of fun. I walk in there with no makeup. I'm looking like hell. I'm accosted by a couple of farm couples. And their recurring line was, what will we do? Who's thinking about us? And the conversation, I sat with those people for half an hour. And the conversation was a great example of a conversation that's kind of happening all across the country that we can capitalize on. And that is that there's not, and those couples were self-supporting farm families who, their property is extremely highly valued now. They've got a couple generations into the farm, and their point was, we can't afford to work for all the people that we have to pay for. This system cannot sustain itself anymore. I mean, that's why Romney's 47% was so unfortunate. He should have separated it out. Yes, there are people, and God bless, I'll collect my Social Security, as will all of you, as will a disability if you earned it. But damn it, when it was 1960 when I was born, there were less than a third of the people on entitlements. Right now, it's over 2/3. That's not sustainable. And so I think the message for Republicans is we have to appeal to the people who are actually doing the work, providing something in the private sector, because they know, and we all know, they cannot sustain the system that we are on.
Mark?
There's a couple of different factors that go with that. One being a lot of people don't realize how much they really pay in taxes. And in the modern world of our paychecks going into direct deposit and not knowing what's coming out, your trash bill going to a direct deposit, so now you don't know how much you're paying for your trash service, and all these additional taxes. So we hear that a city wants to add in an extra $48. It doesn't sound like much. Then you add on the county that has 3 or 4 small taxes, now the state, now the feds. But I don't think a lot of people realize how much of their hard-earned money is actually being taken away from what they're doing. Several people have pointed out tonight that, you need to work usually till August, September, October, or even November in a lot of people's instances before they've made enough money to live off of that money, because everything else prior has gone to taxes. But until we can engage with people and listen to why are they distrustful of government, why are they distrustful of parties, and get those stories so we can share examples. All right, here's what you could do to look into this. I have a friend who's in the same boat. Maybe you should talk to that person. When we become the caring party that the Republican Party was based on when it was founded prior to the Civil War, and expanded and expanded and expanded, we're going to lose ground, because right now we appear to be all about us. We need to be inclusive and let people say, what about you? What are your concerns? Let me tell you an example about that.
Andy?
Yeah. No, that's all the stuff we're talking about is great. And we got to talk about the policy and how we're going to communicate. And personally, I don't care for public policy. I wake up and think, how can I kick Democrats in the teeth today? But the very basics of I've run a lot of campaigns at some of the highest levels, and a lot of the stuff that happens you guys don't see because you see what our friends in the media report, you see what's on TV, but the basic fundamentals of a campaign structure are just not here in Minnesota. We don't do voter identification, and if we do, we don't do it well. We don't know how to micro-target precincts. We don't know how to deliver a message. And until we get that part done, we can't even have the policy discussion. And so I'm all for the policy discussion. That's for smarter people than me. I went to school in Wisconsin. Don't count on me for much. But I'm just going to tell you that until, and the problem is, any campaign hack that's worth anything, that knows how to set up a voter ID database, that knows how to go in and precinct target, that knows how the 4 boxes of messaging and how the 4 boxes of messaging works and how to deliver that, unless we have that foundation, we're going to continue to lose. And the campaign hacks that are worth anything, they're all gone now. And they've all gone to the private sector. They've all gone to get paid, which, you know what? If you live this life like Aaron and I or Sarah and I have for 10, 12, 15 years, you do deserve to get paid. But we need to just at the very core put the foundation down of a campaign structure and then have the policy debate.